What do you see for the future of products of what has become of Sunfire now that you won't be engineering anymore for them? For the last 2 or 3 years, you've been doing all their engineering still, correct? And now you're laid off, so is it all going to be Chinese engineered components?
We've all seen this before. I've seen it in my industry where people come in and they don't really understand what made the company work. Like in my case, it was high pressure subs and tracking down converters and high powered amps. And that's what made the company work. And they don't see that. They see subs and amps, but more generically. So what they do is they say, okay, our dealers tell us they can sell more if they're cheaper, if they're not so expensive. So they take the high pressure sub and they lower the box pressure by making it bigger, and also by lowering its output. And what's happened is the new product line looks just like everybody else's. And I would rather die than design a me-too product. I really do. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. So they have a marketing challenge ahead of themselves. But they're building subs that are basically built out of off-the-shelf parts. Switching power supplies that everybody has.
No OEM technology anymore.
No, just off-the-shelf switch mode power amps, off-the-shelf drivers. The only thing that's unique is the box, the cabinet.
Now, how do the dealers feel about that?
You know what?
They don't know.
I don't know how they feel.
There's information already out now about the new subwoofer line.
Usually, at first everybody's pretty excited because it's a new product, and the product comes about because the rep and the factory ask the dealers, what should we do next to make a bigger success in our marketplace? And the dealers almost always say, make them cheaper, and we'll sell more.
Yeah.
And so the manufacturer goes back and makes them cheaper, and ends up selling more for a brief time period, and then it doesn't work after that. Because people like the high roller one better, the high end one.
Before the last CarverFest, you said you had just finished a new amplifier design. Inverse magnetics or something like that. Whatever happened to it?
It's just now starting to come out. The first pre-production prototypes are in the works now.
Who's producing it?
Nortec. I mean, it's being produced in China.
For Sunfire or
For Sunfire.
How about
And I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think they're going to continue with it. I think the new owner will say, this is crazy, we're just going to buy an off-the-shelf product. This is too complicated. That's what I think, but I don't know for sure.
They just wanted the name.
Bob, how does it differ from the down tracking converter?
The new iMag?
Yeah.
Substantially different. It's a new way of doing things.
How is it better?
The tracking down converter required a big power transformer, if you remember. And these amps that we have here, they're big and heavy. And I designed the iMag mostly for home theater. It weighed a few ounces for 125 watts per channel. So it had 8 channels, 125 watts per channel, 8 times, it is a few pounds is all.
Yeah.
Really lightweight. So that technology the idea was to spin it down into 2 channels, but it didn't work out.
Another question would be, do you have that technology patented, or does that company have that technology?
Well, it's complicated. It's pretty complicated. It turns out if somebody works for a company and they pay you to do something, it belongs to them. However, that's only up to a point, and that's called reduction to practice. Whatever it is, in my case, that I reduce to practice belongs to them. But the knowledge that I gained along the way belongs to me. The knowledge to do it. And the courts have they take a little different, they view knowledge and, know-how, I think, is different. They're 2 different things under the law. Know-how is how to make a thing that you can touch and feel, and knowledge is something that you could use to make another one, or a better one. So
that might be an avenue.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm free to use all the knowledge I've gained to do whatever I want to do. The courts have ruled that. That's really consistent. They've always ruled in that way. And it's basically they've taken the stance that you can't deny anybody the opportunity to make a living in what he knows how to do. You just can't do it. So
So that would be a good reason to put Carver Corporation back into business.
Yeah,
Put
since I
sci-fi
own
out.
Carver Corporation, because I remember I bought it out of
An
bankruptcy.
8-channel, you have to beef it up a little bit. 8-channel, 250 watts per channel, maybe a little bit heavier, but there it is.
There it is. It could be anything.
Is it
I'm
wife-
not sure what I'm.
Is it wife friendly?
Yeah. It's small. It's small.
Anything that you
It's
see
small.
is quite.
Hey,
You
we
want
talking
to
about
do
that.
Yeah.
I know how to work our stuff, thank you.
Yeah.
Bob,
Speaking
speaking
of
of
small,
small,
beyond the regular.
there's
Oh, baby.
would you please tell us a little bit more about the new sub design, or at least the theory that you're currently working on? I believe it's called the Atmos sub.
Okay. Who wants to ask me about how the Atmos sub came about?
Hey, how'd that Atmos up right there, Bob?
How did the Atmos sub come about? Actually, it was not even the Atmos sub, it was a sub before that. It came from an eviction notice by my wife Diana. I had my living room, I had wires and scopes, and I had giant woofers and big surfboards, amazings, all over the living room. And she said, no, you've had this living room for 10 years, it's my turn. I want a grand piano, and I want a Rodin statue, and I want some nice paintings and flowers. And I looked at all of my wires and my scopes. Now, there were 2 living rooms. One was my living room and one was her living room. But I couldn't convince her to let me just keep my wires and my scopes and my big speakers in that room. She says, no, it's my turn now. I said, if you want to have a subwoofer in there, she knew about little speakers, so that was no problem. But if you want to have a subwoofer in there, it can't be this big coffee table thing, especially it can't be 2 of them. So I was evicted. And she said, I said, what if I make it small? And she said, no, sweetie, it has to be invisible. It has to be invisible. So I thought, went to bed, okay, I'm going to make it an invisible sub. Well, the secret to making an invisible sub is just to make it very small, one that I can hold in the palm of one hand. So that's where the Atmos came about. It came about because there was a long felt need, like a night. I had to come up with it by next morning, or I was toast. So I went to sleep that night, and the next morning I woke up and I said, I think I know how to make one. So I mocked one up, and she said, I said, I think this is, you won't be able to find this, I don't think. And when I put it in the living room and I put a plant around it so you couldn't see it, and it was only about this big. It didn't work, it was a mock-up. Now to me, there was a bright red flashing light on it. And it went boom, boom. I didn't see how anybody couldn't see it. But she came down and looked around, and she didn't see it. It was too small and it was hidden behind the flower pot with flowers. So that's how it came about. I started there and I knew it could be done and figured out how to make a high pressure